Adoption of the agenda.
Move. Second.
On adoption, then all those in favor? Motion is carried. Two delegations this evening. We have Mark Matan and Wendy Bunn here from the Regional District regarding the financial plan for water sewer as well as against the general regional district budget as well. So welcome, and we'll get you all set up there on your PowerPoint.
I brought copies if anybody wants them. Whether you had them in your packages. Okay, so thank you very much for having us here. And this evening I'm going to be doing a short overview of the regional district budget, focusing in on the services that the town of Comox participates in. Following my presentation, Mark Ruthven, who is the Senior Manager of Engineering, will present the sewer and the water budgets and provide some highlights for those two. And Don's warned me to do this right. Okay. So just an overview. I know most of you have heard this before when we presented last year, but just to give you an overview of how the regional district does their budgeting. As compared to a municipality, a regional district has a number of services. We in the regional district have about 92, 93 services, and Comox pays into or participates in 22 of those. And each service has their own revenue source and their own budget and expenditures. And unlike a municipality, we cannot move expenditures or money from one service to another. They're in like little silos, and so each service has to find their own funding, whether it be taxation or user fees, and has their own expenditure budget and their own capital budget. A reserve is held within the service. It cannot be used for another service, so they're all very segregated and separate and held separate. So Comox pays into 22 of them. And here's just a depiction of three. I've used three examples: search and rescue, Comox Valley Track and Field, and street lighting service. So as you can see, the search and rescue, the participants or the jurisdictions that pay into that are A, B, C in entirety, so all of Area A, all of Area B, and all of Area C. And A includes Hornby and Denman Island, so everybody pays into search and rescue, as well as the three municipalities. The second example, track and field, B and C pay into it. Comox and Courtenay pays into it. Cumberland does not, and the islands do not. So there's a service, an example where the participants are a bit different. You take a small service like street lighting. We have a number of street lighting services, and it's only a small part of Area B that pays into this particular street lighting service. So it can really vary who pays into each service and how big the service is. On taxation, apportionment is done by converted assessed values. And for the directors who sit on the Regional District Board, we did have a presentation from BC Assessment and talked about the assessments for 2014. And this table shows what the relative differences between 13 and 14 in the assessed values. So most of the areas, except for Courtenay and Cumberland, have experienced a slight decrease in converted assessments. They're not huge, so it's pretty much considered by BC Assessment as fairly status quo. An increase in assessment can either mean the values of the properties, or in Courtney's case, it may be that they've increased it by more development, more building, and possibly some value increases. Okay, so when we apportion the tax in a particular service, we do that based on converted assessments. In this example, which is the Comox Valley Community Justice Center, even though the taxation, and you see the total on the bottom, same taxation from 13 to 14, so there was no raise in the taxation, but the apportionment, because of the assessment shift, and we apportion based on assessment, shifts a slight amount. And so you see what the differences are. So A, B, and C, their portion of paying into that service went down slightly, and the municipalities went up slightly. So that's basically how services work in a regional district. For the planning process, we start quite early. We start in the fall, and we get all the budget managers busy putting their budgets together. We start getting them entered into our system. We get them all done. We review with the CAO all the budgets. And then on January 1st, we get the new completed rolls for the year. And we apportion based on those completed rolls, and we balance off the budget. The budget is then rolled up into the consolidated form, and that gets presented in January to the board. We then start rolling out selected services out to the board, and these are generally the significant budgets that, water, sewer, solid waste, recreation, as well as things like economic development, and the Electoral Area Services Committee that have all the electoral area directors on it. They get a bunch of services presented to them as well. They have a number of services that are just delivered in electoral areas. So we start presenting those, and we go January to mid-March, and that's where we are pretty much right now. We've just balanced off the recommended budget. We had our last committee of the whole meeting yesterday, and we just balanced off the recommended. We'll be publishing that shortly, and that is the recommended budget that will go forward to the bylaw that gets adopted on the 18th and 20th of March.
You will.
Yeah.
Well, it has to be done by March 31st.
It has to be done by March 31st, so stay in the room until you prove it.
I was just kidding.
So these are the services that have taxation. So these are, of the 22 that we talked about Comox participating in or paying into, these are the services that have a tax requisition attached to them. This is what we tax residents for. There are 3 services that I've just separated here. The Comox Valley Emergency Program, even though everybody pays into that, the municipalities pay by contract. They are not taxed directly from the regional district. So we will send an invoice to the town of Comox, and somehow that gets absorbed into your budget, what happens on your end, but it's not a direct tax from the regional district. Water supply, of course, the water committee folks here know that that is done by bulk water rates, and the supply service sells water to those water distribution systems that buy from that service. And that gets translated into a utility bill from the municipal end. Pesticide awareness is another one that Comox and Courtney participate by contract. So that is the same as the emergency program, where we invoice you as a contracted service, and you consolidate it somehow into your budget. So those are the 22. So 19 by taxation and 3 by either bulk water rates or contract. So when we look at the municipalities, these are the municipal partners. You see sort of the split of what dollars go to what services. And you can see that a large percentage goes towards solid waste, sewer, water, and recreation. So about 75% of the dollars in the regional district budget for the municipal partners go towards those 4 services. So they're large services that are quite significant. It's just a breakdown of, if you take a couple of those services out of there, we've taken, take the second line down, the Island Corridor Foundation, last year in 2013, was a one-time grant that the regional district agreed to set aside for the ENN rail line. There was a one-time, so that particular item has disappeared out of the budget. As you can see in 2014, it is 0, so that is a reduction of that amount. Sewer is significant. I've separated that out, and Mark will talk more about the sewer budget. $168,718 increase for Comox for that particular requisition. And the solid waste management, Comox Strathcona Waste Management Service, that has increased quite a bit this year. That's quite a significant budget with lots of capital works and regulatory obligations. So that's experiencing quite a lift this year as well. So if you take those 3 items and take the sewer and the waste management, which are 2 significant pieces, and you look at all other services, that results in a $64,877 increase for the town of Comox. So that first line is a combined comparison of all other services for Comox. And this is just a year-by-year comparison of the taxation rates. And what it comes down to on the right-hand side, if we take an example of a house that is assessed at $300,000, the 2014 increase that they would experience is $6.36. That's a 2.63% increase over 2013. So that is taking a house, taking the tax rates for each of those services and doing the comparison between 13 and 14. There are a couple of services on the 14 that will drop somewhat. One is the the transit budget that was amended yesterday, and the 911 answering service that has dropped a bit from the proposed budget. So that $6 amount will be somewhat less than that. Okay, so when you take that when you're looking at a household, and you take that increase, then you have to add in the emergency program, the pesticide awareness, whatever that ends up being translated on the town side, and then the municipal utilities, which are the water utility and the sewer service utilities. So those I've left out of that increase because those two get translated into utility bills. So the total impact of the household from the CVRD is the taxation, the direct taxation on the left-hand side, plus whatever Comox translates those items into on the tax notice. Okay, so what we've done, as we do in every year, we really do try to minimize tax impacts, and we're very conscious, just like all local jurisdictions are. And we really look at each service, try to see what our work plan is for the next year and what's coming down the road 5 years, and try to budget for those work plan items. We're really quite focused on asset management plans, and we've been doing a lot of work over the last 2 or 3 years of really trying to get asset management plans into those services that have significant capital requirements. And we always look at what's sustainable, and understanding and appreciating the taxpayer impact. And we're all taxpayer, I'm a taxpayer. but ensuring that there is long-term fiscal stability and that we don't compromise tomorrow for the sake of the immediate and try to balance that off. We also have risks that we try to manage in all of our services. I think that is, like any local jurisdiction, we look at that. So our full plan is found on our website under Finance and under Current Financial Plan. Any of the past 4 years, there's another link called Past Financial Plans, so if you want to look at comparisons, we have 4 years of history there. Probably in about another few days, probably early next week, we hope to have the recommended budget posted on that site, and we'll send out an email to all of the regional directors notifying them that the budget is online. And like I said, that recommended is the one that will be going forward in the bylaw. So that's sort of the wrap-up. Adoption, 18th and 20th of March to the CBRD board, and we'll get posted on the website.
Thank you, Wendy. Maybe at this juncture, some questions might come forward on your presentation. Mark will be doing here shortly. One I had was on the A&M Railway or Island Corridor Foundation. That money actually is just sitting in reserve.
Correct. It's sitting in reserve at the regional district, just pending whatever movement happens. Yeah.
Right. And if it did never go anywhere, it would come back, I assume, at some point? To the...
Yes, it would.
Okay. And is there a public process that your board is engaging in terms of presenting this budget, other than through councils?
Tomorrow night,
Okay.
4 to 7.
All right.
So the public, it's an open house information session from 4 to 7 at the CBRD boardroom.
Okay.
And all the budget managers will be there and will field whatever questions people have.
Great. Okay, other questions? Seeing none, then I guess you're up, Mark. Thanks, Wendy.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I wanted to just spend a few more minutes focusing in on water and sewer. Like Wendy mentioned, these are some of the larger services that are provided to the town and make up quite a large portion of the money that's spent by the town on regional district services. So starting with water, just providing a map here to give an overview of the water system in the area that it serves. It serves the City of Courtenay, the town of Comox, and 5 local service areas that kind of surround those communities. Approximately 40,000 people are provided water from this service. And I've got a couple of slides here that just show how this service starts and the main infrastructure that makes it up. So first of all, there's some BC Hydro infrastructure shown here. But we take water from the Puntledge River at BC Hydro's diversion dam. And then that water is transported through a large 10-foot diameter pipe down to BC Hydro's generating station, where we have 2 takeoffs. And that's where we take off the water. Also, we have a backup generating or backup pump station at that location in case BC Hydro dewaters the pipeline for maintenance on their infrastructure. And then we pump water from the river. After we take water out of BC Hydro's penstock, we chlorinate it in this chlorination facility that we have on their property. And then it's distributed around the community. There are several of these reservoirs. There's 6 in total. These 2 are in East Courtenay, and the water is stored in these reservoirs. So the chlorination station, the transmission piping that gets the water to these reservoirs, and these reservoirs make up a major part of the system. There's also some major pump stations that we have to move water around. So a couple of slides here on some work that we've been doing the last few years that really impacts the budget for this service. And that is work that has come about as a requirement from the Vancouver Island Health Authority. So back in 2007, they introduced a new drinking water standard, which all local governments have to meet. This standard is for surface water supplies, like Comox Lake. And currently, our system does not meet this requirement. And that's mostly because of two issues. One is turbidity in the Puntledge River, where we currently get the water from, and that we don't have two treatment barriers. We only have chlorination in place as a single barrier. The policy also includes criteria where if a purveyor can find a source of water that meets a certain turbidity requirement, they could be excluded from filtration. And that was something that really interested the regional district, and something that we pursued. And we pursued that over the last couple of years with water quality sampling program on Comox Lake. So the result of that work is that we did apply for filtration deferral based on the water quality sample results, and that VHA did approve our application in 2013, and we're now moving down that path of filtration deferral. So that's shown in a bit of a different way on this diagram, where we were able to answer this question in 2013, whether we would be approved or not, and we're now moving in this direction. And so this is important for the budget because it really sets the capital work in this service for the next 4 or 5 years. It provides us that firm direction. So when VHA provided the approval, they amend our operating permit to include a schedule that looks like this. So these are the tasks that VHA has us doing over the next 4 or 5 years. And the green ones are done. We started these things or actually finished them. And then in 2014, you can see that we're focused on developing the scope of a deep water intake project and siting study for the plant, and then starting to do some engineering work for the deep water intake and UV plant. Sorry. So the next slide kind of shifts away from those big projects to predicting how much water is going to be used. And this is key to this service's budget, because the amount of water that's used dictates the revenue that comes into this service in terms of bulk water sales. So we work closely with the City of Courtenay and with the Town of Comox to determine in the future how's water going to be used. And these green bars just show historically how it's been used. So you can see there's quite a bit of variation from year to year. Water demand can really be impacted by weather, mostly weather, but also by water efficiency measures that are in place and that kind of thing. Overall, you can see a downward trend, although there are some years where things have jumped up. And in the future, we're predicting a bit of a downward trend. You can hardly see here on this graph before things start to increase again, just due to community growth. The next slide here is a summarized budget slide for the water service, Comox Valley Water System. This graph shows the 2013 budget amount, 2014 budget amount, and then the variance between those budget amounts is shown here. Overall, you can see that the budget has not changed by very much for this service, but there are some key differences which I'll just point out. We're expecting a little bit less revenue, and that's just because we're predicting a little bit less water will be used or demanded in 2014 than 2013. The next change is the prior year surplus, where this is mostly generated from capital work that was not completed in 2013, so there's a bit more of a surplus in 2014. We're expecting an increase in personnel costs. There's no additional staff in this service, no additional people, but there has been a change in the allocation of the SCADA technician position, so that's increased the cost here a little bit, and then also increased benefits and increased wages just through the PP agreement. Under operating, there's a reduction in costs here. One of the major impacts here was our rebate programs. They are still in place this year, but we've reduced the number of rebates just to match the kind of demand over the last few years so that we're not over budgeting for that item. We're just shifting things here. You can see that in 2013 we had a large transfer to capital projects and a smaller transfer to reserves. This year it's just reversed. We're having a smaller transfer to capital and a larger transfer to reserves. You can see that these numbers are almost the same. So So those are really the highlights. On the capital side, we have about $1 million worth of capital work. It's mostly focused on engineering, the start of engineering for the deep water intake UV project and the siting study for that project. So it's, most of that capital is engineering work. So moving from the 5-year plan, which was summarized, sorry, the first year of the 5-year plan was summarized there, to the longer outlook for this service, we have a list here that shows 10 years worth of projects. The first 5 are associated with, or the first 4 rows here associated with the deep water intake UV work. It's really complying with the VHA policy. And then in the future, we've got some other projects here which will improve the capacity of the service to accommodate community growth in the future. You can just see highlighted here that over the next 5 years, we're spending a significant amount of money here. Sorry, next 4 years. The way we complete this long-term analysis is we hold the operating side of the budget relatively constant and really look at the capital requirements and the funding of those requirements. And that's how we produce the long-term projection. Right now, over the next 10 years, we're projecting to spend $27 million. We'll be utilizing all of our reserve funds to do that, plus whatever excess revenue we have over the next 10 years. And we're predicting that the service will only need to borrow $1.8 million of new debt in 2017 to accommodate this $27 million of spending. So the service is in pretty good shape financially to be able to afford this level of capital without a lot of borrowing. The bulk water increase is included in year 2016, going from 64 cents to 66 cents. But that gets reevaluated every year, and we'll determine through this budgeting process each year whether that increase is required or not. Currently, the reserve funds are about $16 million. You can see the difference between capital works reserves at 10 and development cost charge reserves at $6 million. So for water, that's all I had. I just wanted to pause here in case there are any questions on water that we can address.
Questions? Councilor Price?
Yes. The filtration deferral, can that be deferred indefinitely? May it not even be required with the other measures in place?
Well, VHA is very careful about calling it a deferral, not a exclusion or some other term. So they definitely want to, ensure that that can always be put back on the table, the requirement for filtration. But there's many things that we can do to, reduce the likelihood that a filtration plant will be required, like watershed protection, which I didn't talk about, but it is a key part of the requirements of VHA, and it's included in that schedule that they laid out for us. So we are going to be developing a thorough watershed protection plan, and that can really mitigate the risks to the watershed. And then the deep water intake also mitigates many of those risks, and the UV plant provides a second level of treatment. So once we're done with this project and we see the results of the water quality, we may be in a very good position for a long period of time. But there isn't a guarantee that a filter plant won't be required in the future.
And do you think our development cost charges are in line so that future growth costs are not borne by current taxpayers?
We have a development cost charge bylaw in place. It was developed in 2006 based on a project list that was put together at that time. Now most of those projects are complete, and we are due to revisit that bylaw and revisit the DCCs for this service. So that will happen in 2014. It's we've got some money in the budget to do that DCC study this year. So I think the study will tell whether the amount is right or not. I think it will be close.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? The 16 million in reserve that you've shown there roughly, is that the same number that appears from time to time in the letters to the editor and perhaps a few beefs and bouquets about, there's all this money in reserve and you're overcharging us? And I guess when I'm I probably know the answer to this, but is there not an opportunity there for the regional district, the water committee, to promote the fact that we do have healthy reserves for these works that are required, and to try to alleviate some misinformation?
Yeah. Yes, I think there is an opportunity there. I think we do a good job of that in our staff reports to the members of the water committee and to the board. Maybe we could do a better job to the public. But yeah, we have been prudent and built up reserves, and it is going to save taxpayers on debt payments in the future.
We do have the chair of the water committee here, so he's got his hand up.
Yeah, and the author of those letters to the editor, I've spoken with him several times, and what it amounts to is it's a matter of philosophy. He doesn't believe in reserves. He thinks that if you build up a reserve fund, you're charging existing taxpayers when you should be charging future taxpayers. And I've argued with him, be that as it may, why would you want to saddle existing taxpayers with further debt? When you can limit your $25 million capital expenditure down to $1.8 million in debt, and it's not like we've got a hugely fluctuating population. I mean, it's really the same taxpayer. And I sit at this table, and I've sat here for many years with Don, and the town of Comox is really debt adverse, and basically I share that philosophy. And but unfortunately, the author of those letters doesn't believe in reserves. He believes that you should fund everything through debt. And I think, why would you want to spend taxpayers' money on interest rates? So that's, and you can't convince him otherwise.
No, but I'm just saying there may be a public relations opportunity there to promote the aspect, same as the hospital district has done with respect to its reserves.
Well, the regional district does have a PR department.
All right, well, we'll leave it in your capable hands.
Well, and we may actually find out when he talks about sewer why you may have some reserve funds too.
Well, I understand that. So any other questions on water? Okay, well, thank you, Mark, for that. On to sewer.
So starting off in a similar way to water, here's a map of the sewer service. And this service essentially is to provide bulk wastewater treatment to the city of Courtenay and the town of Comox. It also provides service to D&D at CFB Comox, and to Comox First Nations at their Indian Reserve number 1. A couple of pictures here just to let people know what this service is all about. So we have a wastewater treatment plant that's located out near Cape Lazo. It's a secondary level wastewater treatment plant. Very, very good plant, well run, well maintained, with a good asset management plan. The other parts of the infrastructure are a pump station, large pump station at the city of Courtenay that takes 100% of the city of Courtenay's flow. Pump station here at Jane Place that takes about 70 or 80% of the town of Comox's flow. And then the treatment plant here, another pump station here that takes flow from D&D. And the outfall. So there's a bunch of force main along the shore here from the plant to the outfall, which goes off Cape Lazo. And then also there's a lot of force main that connects these pump stations to the plant. The discharge is 3 kilometers offshore, 80 meters deep. The plant was designed for 25 years of capacity. It was built in 1984, or commissioned in 1984. So it's now 30 years old and still doing a good job. And there still is capacity remaining in this plant. We're going to talk in a bit here about the projects that have to happen. But it should be known that in normal dry weather conditions, this plant still has some capacity left for growth. But we do have to start thinking about the future, and that's what these projects are about. So, like I said, this service was constructed all at once in 1984. And it's now 30 years old. So in 2011, we completed some major planning work that was really looking to the next 30 years to say, well, what do we have to do to this service to make it continue? And that was a sewer master plan that was done, and many projects were identified in there that would need to happen. And then to support that work, we did this second study here, a smaller study, which really prioritized the work that was identified in the sewer master plan. And that was called the 10-year prioritized capital project list. But the outcome of this work was that we identified that over $70 million worth of work had to be done to the sewer treatment plant. And that was a combination of environmental work, capacity increase work, and it all had to be done within a relatively short period of time. The consultants first identified that most of it would have to happen in about 10 years. So when we rolled that work into the financial plan, there was a need for increases in the requisition. And what happened when we took that 72 million, put it into our financial plan, we soon realized that we didn't have the reserves and we didn't have the requisition in place to cover these kinds of costs. And so we built a model that had a lot of borrowing in it. And that's what we presented last year here and the year before. That was rolled into the financial plan. This year we've done a little bit more analysis, and I wanted to share some of that with you tonight. So, like I said, the sewer master plan and the 10-year prioritized plan were developed, and they were based on a certain growth rate that was in place at the time. And that growth rate was based on some history. Usually consultants are conservative when they develop these growth rates because they want to be on the larger size, or the advanced side, not come too late or come with infrastructure that's too small. But what we've realized is that the growth rate's quite high, and it's actually created a situation where some of these projects are scheduled to happen before they're actually required. And that creates these issues here where it really eliminates an opportunity for us to save any money for these projects. It increases the amount of new debt required, probably. And it strains our internal resources to actually get this work done. That level of work is a lot of work for the regional district to pull off with the resources that we have. So we took a second look at this year as part of our budgeting process. And what we've done is identified how projects can move around to create some opportunities for us. So this is impossible to read, I apologize for that. But what we've done here, what I wanted to highlight was that we've really shifted some work out here. So we've shifted this work out beyond 10 years. So that's been shifted out to now end in 2029. So this becomes, instead of a 10-year plan, a 16-year plan. And the next slide is going to show the opportunities that are greater, the next few slides. So what this does is it takes our $73 million, which is the same amount. We're not, all of these projects are still required, so none of them have been removed from the list. We haven't taken any off. But it does move spending out of the first 5 years. So the first 5 years we've dropped from 31 to 21 million. And then in the first 10 years we've dropped from 74 to 30. And we feel this is a more realistic work plan. We're not taking on we don't feel we're taking on any increased risk in terms of providing the service or meeting any of our environmental requirements or increasing risk in any way. And here's the sort of opportunities that are allowed here. I've underlined these words here because this is really important to this analysis that was done. We still require a large increase in the requisition. But if we implement that requisition increase the way that it's presented and are able to spread out the projects over a longer period of time, it creates an opportunity for increased reserve contributions, increased transfers to capital, lower borrowing by 37 million. We were going to borrow 53, now we're projecting 16 million that will need to be borrowed over 16 years. And then lower debt payments of 43 million. So in the past, all of the increase in the requisition was going to go towards debt payments. And that was going to service debt for the next 20 years. Now the increase in the requisition is going to be either used to fund capital works directly or go into reserve funds for when the projects come up. So we're going to use that. We still require the requisition increase, but we're going to use it in a much different way. Sorry, the last thing was that we've also reduced the future municipal requisition by 1.1 million, and that's shown here on the next slide. this is a bit of a busy slide too, but focusing on they're supposed to be orange bars, but this color here, this was the third scenario that we analyzed. You can see that large increases are required, but that we level out at about $1 million less than the other two scenarios that were analyzed. So that was some of the long-term work, and I presented that first because it impacts the budget. So down here, we're taking the work from that 16-year plan that we put together now, and that comes in down here as this year's capital work. But starting at the top here, sorry, I just got to get caught up with my notes. Just want to highlight some of the key changes. So we are, as I said, projecting a large increase, or recommending a large increase in the requisition, and that will carry on for the next several years. I do have a slide that shows how that affects the town of Comox's sewer charge coming up. Not too many other changes on the revenue side. And then we have an increase in personnel costs here. Two of our operators are going to move from level 2 operators to level 3, so that has an impact on costs. And then there's also the regular increase in benefit changes within the agreement. On the operating side, our operating costs are up by $53,000, and it's mostly tied to a study that we want to do this year, odor control study that we included in the budget. Otherwise, the budget remains largely unchanged on the operating side. And then transfers to capital, we're using quite a bit of our excess revenue transferred directly to capital work to fund it, shown here. And then the rest of any excess revenue that we might have will go into reserves to start building larger reserves for these future projects. So this is the long-term project list. We've already talked about it quite a bit, but just showing that instead of ending at 2023, the projects carry on to 2029. And this is the same list that was developed out of the 10-year capital plan. So over the next few years, you'll see the 2014, 2015 projects drop off, the total amount start to come down as we work through these. Another thing that we do in this service, as we do in every service, is really reevaluate every year at budget time. You know, is this the right plan that's in place? Can any of these projects be shifted around to help with the funding? So we do that every year, and then every 2 years within this service, we have a commitment to update the development cost charges to make sure that we're on track there. So in summary, we'll be projected to spend $73 million for the next 16 years. We'll utilize all of our existing reserves, plus any future contributions to reserves and transfers to capital to pay for those projects. We'll still need to borrow $16 million of debt over that 16-year period. Some of it coming early in that period, and some of it right at the end in 2028, 2029. This results in a requisition increase each year between now and 2020. And that ends up looking like this for the town of Comox. So large increases in the charge for sewer, going from $321 in 2014 to $459 in 2018. There's our current reserve fund balances right now. And I'm available for any questions.
All right, questions on sewer? One question I had is, I assume that inflation is taken into account in terms of all those cost estimates?
It isn't actually. The cost estimates are Class D cost estimates, so they're plus minus 40%. They're very high level estimates that were done as part of the study, and they haven't been escalated. The only thing that's been escalated is on the operating side of the budget, we did increase the cost by 1% per year for that 16-year period. But the capital costs, they will have to be improved at some point. Right now, they're high-level costs.
That's okay.
It should be noted that there is no infrastructure grants factored into this as well. And a lot of these projects, many of them would be eligible for infrastructure grants, so, but we can't factor that in, of course, because we don't know. That's enough.
And on the borrowing, what term of loan are you looking at?
So the budget is assembled based on a 20-year term, that's 5% interest.
Has there been consideration of shorter term loans?
There has. In the past, we've presented a couple of different scenarios with shorter terms, and I think the interest rate's always been the same. And we've, I think, shared with the Sewage Commission, you know, how that could impact the requisition, impacts the long-term borrowing costs. So, you know, it reduces the overall, increases the overall cost borrowing, but lowers the term.
Right, reduces the interest payment.
Reduces the interest payments.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you for your presentation. I know our staff and our 3 sewer commissioners have worked hard on this, so no doubt we'll see it unfold as it proceeds. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we have Doug Anastos from TELUS to present. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to come in and present.
You don't need to speak right into that.
Okay, yeah. Some of these are changes from location to location. Some are very precise, I found, so. But this, yeah, that works. So I'm here tonight to talk about wireless technology in Comox, and specifically a new type of technology that TELUS has been piloting since late last year, and it's what's called is small cell technology. It's different from anything we've ever done before, which, you know, typically what we do are larger cell sites, towers or rooftop installations. But this is really a new direction for TELUS. So I'd like to give an overview of this technology and just go through some of the different applications generally and how, you know, we'd like to use this technology in Comox to address the coverage concerns throughout much of the community. So wireless trends, I think we all probably know somewhat intuitively, are increasing at a very rapid rate. These are just some graphs from, you know, on a global scale, but certainly they hold true for Canada as well. Actually, even more so for Canada, where data usage is higher than most countries. Basically, you know, with the proliferation of smartphones these days, our network, our existing network that used to work in the past no longer can meet that demand. And so we're trying to find new ways continuously to deploy a network of cell sites that will continue to meet that demand, both in the present and also trying to forecast in the future, so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where you know, people are dropping calls, blocking calls, and the rest of that. So what we've been doing recently is partnering with municipalities, educational institutions, and other, you know, other institutions, commercial entities, to deploy this network. We also you make use of our vast network of wood poles across the province as well, and that's really what you know, I'd be talking about tonight. So basically what small cell technology is that it's an integrated layer within the broader, you know, what we call the macro network. It's almost like an umbrella that's existing. It works within that layer, and it basically provides relief to the existing cell sites that are out there. Picks up data traffic closer to where people are, and sometimes, you know, what it does is it basically just picks up data, and voice calls will go up to the larger cell sites, which are better at handling the mobility side of things. A couple of advantages of the small cell sites are smaller equipment, and when I say smaller equipment, really it's you know, shrinking everything down at a very you know, very small level, where before we had large panel antennas radio equipment, ground space required, backup generators, for instance. So taking all that and squishing it into the size of a laptop computer. So it's really quite revolutionary. No one else is doing it at this point, really in North America, at least at the scale that TELUS is planning on deploying these small cells. And another key point that I'd like to make just on the third bullet there is that this technology mitigates the need for a larger, for the larger cell sites. And so this is, in our work we find this quite often. People want service. That's universal, really. But when it comes time to explaining how that service, can be delivered, and that's really where, So it's a constant, it's difficult sometimes, and it can be divisive in communities as well. So this is in response to that as well. But it's not to say that it's going to replace, cell towers. This technology will just supplant cell towers in every case. That's not the case, but we are looking for ways that we can replace, a larger installation with these, and that's what we're doing actually in Comox with our design. This is a useful image, I think. This is the urban situation setting. This is Edmonton here, so just to sort of provide an understanding, I guess, a visual on how a wireless network works when you go outside and you use your phone, and it just sometimes miraculously works wherever you go. So basically, what's happening is that there's larger, as I said before, these macro sites, typically rooftop antennas or towers, providing a broad coverage, and then there's microsites basically throughout different areas, both inside buildings and outside. That's what we're moving more and more towards. Each has their own application. There are different tools to try to basically address different issues that we're having in our network. Small cells are best used for capacity, as I mentioned, but they can also be used for coverage, which is what we try to do in Comox. So this is what we're talking about, basically. This is the unit. It's, not to get too technical, but just to draw out a few points here. It's very small. It's about 1 square foot. It's sort of like, as I mentioned, a laptop computer, but quite a bit deeper than that. It draws a very low amount of power, between 140 and 160 watts, and actually even less than that. We're finding with many of the installations that we've already completed and tested. And similarly, it puts out a very low amount of radio frequency energy at 5 watts. So this is, I can speak to some, what that means basically from a health perspective, if you'd like. But basically, the takeaway there is that it's far below the standards that Health Canada has set for maximum exposure limits. Hundreds of times below, basically, if you're standing even just a few feet or a few meters away from one unit. And so the other thing too, just from a visual perspective, basically there's a shield on the front, and it can be painted if on municipal infrastructure to blend in. When installed on our wood poles, pretty much it's the white unit that's installed, and it doesn't really need to be camouflaged when there's a whole lot of other stuff, I think, out there with transformers and everything else. Usually dwarfs these. The other thing too, just with the 3 knobs on the bottom, basically it's a plug-and-play design. So you plug power into it, plug fiber into it, and that's it. So it's very, very easy for us to install, provided that there is fiber, which we have, extensive network that we can use. These are some pictures of what they look like when they're installed. And what you see here, so these are 2, on the left-hand side, this is a TELUS-owned pole with fiber running across the top, with 1 small cell installed on it. On the right, there's 2 cells installed on 1 pole. And the reason for that is that one handles the 3G traffic and the other is for the 4G. So it's, in that kind of a case, it would be providing coverage as well as the LTE 4G service. And those ones are on the right. That's installed on I believe on a BC Hydro TELUS joint-owned pole, which are most of the poles in the community. Power lines running across the top with transformers and everything, and TELUS stranded fiber on the bottom. A couple more pictures. This is on municipal infrastructure. What it looks like on municipal infrastructure. We have been, as I mentioned, approaching municipalities about master license agreements to use municipal infrastructure. So this is an example in Vancouver. These ones are painted to blend in, so quite unobtrusive. What you'll see also is with this one. This is a good example of the small cell is actually an electrical box in the back. So each one would have its own electrical box powering the unit, and also there's a breaker that basically shut off. Finally, so this is the boundaries of where we're looking to deploy small cells, and so really a large part of the community. I guess what I'd say here is that what we're trying to do is basically fix the problem throughout homes with this solution. And as I mentioned before, we had some other ideas in our plans with towers and the like, but this is what we think would fix the issue. In residential areas, as you call, Brooklyn Elementary School has come up. In the past, we've taken a look at what would be required there to provide coverage to the school. And really the next step, we've been planning locations and determining what would work on the ground, and we're prepared to proceed with installation in May to June with these going on there. So that's the end of the presentation.
All right, great, thank you. Any questions? Councilor Brown?
Two quick questions. How many of these would be required in that grid? Just
Yeah.
interest sake.
That's a good question. I should have mentioned that before as well. So we're looking at 170, let's see, 164 throughout. Yeah, but they'd be double mounted on each pole, so it'd be half the number of poles that would be required.
So would this be a significant cost savings rather than putting a big tower in?
It can be. It depends. The equipment is less expensive. There's more of it.
Yeah.
And where costs really come into play is if you need to run, fiber to different areas.
And my assumption here is that this is proprietary. In other words, you have to be a TELUS customer to benefit from this. Is that, like, they don't, I've never been quite clear whether you share towers with other companies or how that all works.
It's a good question, yeah. So basically, the way that works, there's a few different things that happen there. If there's a tower, then Industry Canada, the regulating authority for telecommunications, requires us to share that infrastructure. And we do that all the time. 60% of all cell sites are on shared infrastructure, basically. This is different because these are only installed on existing infrastructure. So, we have different frequencies that we use than what Rogers uses. So Rogers customers would not be able to use this, make a call unless it was an emergency call.
Okay.
For instance, TELUS and Bell have an arrangement where we do share networks, so Bell customers would be.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks for your presentation. All right, so we'll move on now with minutes of meetings. So we have for approval the February 19th council meeting minutes.
Move.
Second.
On approval, all in favor? That's carried. And for receive, the committee of the whole meeting minutes of February 26th.
Move.
Second.
Receive then, all in favor?
Right, just talk about one item on that?
Well, we'll deal with them as we go, but is it on the minutes or on the?
It's on the minutes.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Well, we had a presentation done by that lady from Vista Housing.
Yes?
And she made the presentation and she left, and we never gave her any indication of where we were going to go with that, or whether there was any
Yeah.
support.
Well,
or-
staff, we don't normally make any motions.
I know, that's why.
And staff will be considering the application as it's submitted, and it will come back to council
Oh,
that way. So,
okay. No, it's just that, enlightened communities all over British Columbia are looking toward these
Yeah.
sort of things to solve the housing problem, so.
yeah, no, I think absent any demonstrated opposition at that meeting to it, I think staff are proceeding on the basis of an application being made, and I know that the opponents have been in contact by email, at least with all of us, and perhaps meeting as well.
Okay.
And there will be further discussion at this table around some of the requests that we made. We need to figure out quite a few things in regards to BCCs and property taxes and so on. So once the application's made, then it's a live issue for staff to bring them to us at the appropriate time, I think. On receipt then, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Several recommendations there. First one is that the draft 2014 CARET public report for 2013 be approved as amended.
Moved. Second.
Any discussion on that? Thank you for the additions, Director of Finance. All those in favor? Motion's carried. And with respect to the financial plan, there were two recommendations. We'll deal with the first one.
I just had is there going to be an opportunity, I had a question for the finance officer and then possibly a motion.
Well, let's deal with the motions coming from Committee of the Whole first,
Okay.
and then we'll see what we get to.
Yep.
So first of all, the motion is that the draft financial plan be amended to remove the additional RCMP officer and half full-time equivalent of support staff person previously proposed for April 1, 2015 and April 2016 respectively, and the funds saved by this change be used to reduce proposed general taxation
Come with that.
2014.
Second.
Okay, on that one, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. The second one is related to the following, that the draft financial plan be amended to redirect the use of gas tax revenues community works funds in both 2014 and 2015 capital plans, and the water metering capital expenditure, the Brooklyn Creek Greenway capital expenditure, and that the resulting general fund revenues that are freed up as a result of that change, $24,060 per year, be used to add a new capital expenditure for downtown revitalization in 2014 and 2015.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if we could just, well, maybe we should get the recommendation on the table, and then I'd like to make a minor amendment to it.
Yeah, I'll move that.
We'll move in second and consideration of amendments.
All right. With those funds of $24,060 from the 2014-2015, it's not going to affect the budget or the capital plan if we bundle those and put the $48,120 into the 2014 capital plan. Otherwise,
So that's your motion to amend?
that's right.
Is there a second for the amendment?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we need to discuss that amendment. I'll give you the floor.
Well, it's just that $24,000 a year, I mean, if we spread it over 2 years, that means whatever the BIA come up with for a project that we approve would have to be phased in over 2 years, when really the money's there. We can just have them spend it all in 1 year, right?
Right, although I just want to be clear on this, that this is not specifically one that is coming from the BIA. It's a town project.
Exactly, but I mean,
So, it's a capital project, and we haven't yet determined what it is going to look like. We'll certainly take input from the BIA.
yeah, well, that's what the intent
But
was.
it's certainly not something that's a BIA project.
It's on Facebook.
Yeah, and talk to other
Yeah.
members of that committee, but I would say
We were
that,
looking for input from the BIA,
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
misspoke by calling it a BIA project, but we're looking to the BIA to come back with some recommendations for the town to make the decision.
And they're aware that it's a town decision.
right, and it also follows somewhat out of the work that the town has done on the land enhancement project. So, on the amendment then, we have further discussion, Councilor Brooks.
Well, just for clarification, The 2015, $24,060, wouldn't that be from taxation in 2015? So we'd actually be increasing the taxation in 2014 to lump them together.
Director of Finance perhaps can answer that.
So if you recall, our financial plan is actually expenditures exceed revenues in all of the 5 years. So from 2014 to 2018, in each and every year, expenditures exceed revenues. And the reason that we can balance in that situation is that we're bringing forward over $1.6 million in surplus from 2013. So in fact, we're applying surplus to each and every year of the plan. So if you take an expenditure and shift it to a different year, all that's going to happen is that in the year you're moving it to, you'll apply more of the surplus carried forward, and in the year it came from, you'll apply less of the surplus carried forward.
No significant effect.
So the short answer is the money's in the bank. And just to be clear, I did talk to
Barbara, did you?
So it wouldn't impact the percentage increase of taxation.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
That's fine, that's a good question. Anyone else on this side have their hand up? Tom, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that I did talk to our Director of Finance before I made the motion, so. And I made it clear that it wouldn't affect the taxation in 2014.
So I guess the question I would have is, given that this project is yet to be determined what it is, there would certainly have to be design work done, whatever it might be, if it's wayfinding or what have you. Is it practical to have it done in 2014 in terms of getting a project and whatever it might be? And I mean, I suppose it's of no consequence if we don't get it done in 2014 and carries forward. So that was more of a practical question, given where we're at in terms of a project that we really don't know what the parameters
Well,
are.
we'll have to see what they come back with.
So this may be somewhat moot in the sense that it might not get all done this year.
The whole intent of the amendment was so it didn't look like it was a project that had to be spread over 2 years.
Gotcha.
They could come up with a project that amounts to that much money, and your point's well taken. It might happen next year anyway, but I just didn't want to appear like it had to be a phased program or a two-pronged program.
So, CEO, how do you see this unfolding, assuming we approve this by budget, and where do you see staff taking this?
Well, we would consult with the BIA to see on ideas that they have that would fit. We haven't really developed any criteria, or council hasn't developed, and we've talked about wayfinding, and I guess we can come up with some ideas with the BIA as to where this could go. And
But it would have to be, I assume, a capital project.
yes, it's in the capital budget, and it would be a capital project, and subject to approval. We have to bring it back to council as well to get your approval, and ultimately, I think, to expend the money, because there is no clear direction as to what this is.
Okay. Is that clear enough for everyone? Okay, with those points in mind, are you ready for the amendments? All those in favor? Motion's carried on motion as amended. All those in favor?
Oh, I was just
Sorry.
going to make a quick comment
Yes.
that, yeah, and I did watch I was away last week, as
Yes.
noticed. I did watch the streaming, and it is a very handy method to catch up. And I certainly appreciated the debate on it, and I was impressed that I think it came down to a win-win solution, and to have unanimous vote to work through that, I think it was to be commended. So.
Okay, thank you for that. So,
Appreciate it.
all those in favor? Motion's carried. All right, so moving on, unless there's something further.
So I just wanted a question for the Director of Finance. In past, we've taken the tax increase to business and reduced it by 1%. We have a rather low tax increase this year, and I was wondering what the effect on our budget would be if we increased the business tax increase and put that to 0%, what effect that would have on our residential tax rate.
All right. Keep in mind, we're not necessarily done in the budget. There's still at least one more funding request, so there may be other considerations. But our Director of Finance probably has your answer.
Your Worship, I was given notice that this question was coming, So if you could pass these around.
It's just magic.
It helps because
The
then
principal
I can
knows the
crunch
price.
the numbers and give you an answer. So if you look at this table, I've started with the actual tax levy in 2013, and then there's 3 columns over on the right. One is based on an overall increase of 1.1%. Then the next column over is based on that same increase, $78,230, but the business class pays 1% less than general property taxes. So in that situation, business would pay an increase of just over a quarter point, 0.276%, and residential would be 1.276%. Business class ends up paying an additional $3,462 in property taxes. If you look to the next column over, and we assume that there are no additional property taxes from business, then their increase would be 0, and residential and the other classes move up to 1.33. Now, these are preliminary numbers. I know there's a supplementary coming on the 2013 numbers that will change them. I know that we're waiting for the 2014 revised roll as well at the end of this month. So, I mean, these percentages could change a little. The other thing to remember is that there's an equal impact on our PILT, because the amount of PILT we get is roughly the same as the amount of business taxes we get. So if you have no increase in the business taxes, then there sure won't be any increase in the PILT.
Okay.
It happens that the budget this year for PILT is exactly the same as last year, because I tend to be a little conservative when I'm doing my revenue estimates. So, short answer is that there's a $3,400 tax shift that would have to come off the business class, and it raises the tax increase for everybody else just a little bit.
All right, with that information, you're going to make a motion.
So would it be appropriate, so I would make a motion that we make that change?
So that you're talking about a business increase of 0,
Yes.
and a corresponding residential increase of
Should be
1.33,
1.33, yes.
and the overall effect is still 1.1, as we talked about last week. So that's been moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, are you ready for the question? All those in favor? Motion's carried.
Business people will be thrilled.
All right. Don't ask any more questions. You got it. All right, anything further on the financial plan? And just so you're aware, there is a presentation coming next week from the Housing Task Force. And there may be others I don't know, but the intent now, staff will take these numbers and commence preparation, I believe, of the financial plan bylaws, which will come back to us in a few weeks, ultimately for approval no later than May 15th. All right, so moving on, no committee reports, manager report for receipt at page 33.
Second.
Receipt then, all those in favor? Anything arising out of that? Seeing none, we move on. Regional District Board meeting minutes, February 13th, for the Hospital District Board, as well as Strathcona
Move the sheet of vote.
Waste Management. Thank you. Any discussion on those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. For adoption, we have the Lancaster Heights Sanitary Lift Station bylaw amendment, and it's bylaw 1715 for adoption.
Move.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. For new business, we have the development permit application DP 14-1, 1720 Beaufort Avenue. Staff recommending it be issued upon resolution of outstanding items and subject to the conditions listed in Schedule 1 of the next planning report. Is there a mover?
The recommendation.
And a seconder?
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Swift.
Looking at this and given where it is, I can see that this is following the letter of the law in terms of what is required. But I'm wondering if there's any possibility to waive the landscaping bond in some form. It seems like a lot for them to be paying for the privilege of just replacing these trees. You know, they've had to have a development permit and now a bond. I don't think there's any question that they're going to go ahead with the work.
All right, CAO or planner, would you care to respond to that? In terms of policy and procedures?
If council wishes to do that, we would just delete the outstanding item. On a typical landscape bond, we take 120% of the estimated value of the landscaping. In this case, they are doing two things. They are replacing the trees, and they are doing or replacing a large portion of the understory. In other words, their low-level planting. The proposed landscape bond of $2,400 and change would be for trees only, so that doesn't include the underplanting. And it would be on planting of the trees, we would be then refunding at maximum holdback that you would have is a 10% holdback for 1 year to ensure that the trees take. So that would be our standard procedure, and if council wishes to change that, then all they would have to do is amend the LCR or delete it in this entire.
All right, any further questions? That's on page 51, the schedule showing the bond.
So it does seem to me to be quite a bit of overkill for, you know, they're not doing a lot of work here. And I can't imagine that they got, like our DP application is about $800, isn't it? And I can't imagine they got $800 worth of value out of that. On a, you know, to me this is a bit of a minor landscaping issue, and we've got landscape bonds, we've got arborists, we've got $800 for a DP. It just seems totally to be overkill.
Mr. Planner, I think we're following town policy, but he is free.
I'm sure he is.
Yes, the application fee is $250 because the works are under $10,000 in value, so the application fee drops to $250.
All right, so it's within council's purview at this juncture to eliminate the landscaping bond under outstanding item as well as, I guess, the condition number 5. So if that's council's pleasure, we can move an amendment to the recommendation.
I'd like to make a motion that we eliminate the landscaping bond.
Okay, so by way of amendment, that would delete the outstanding item and also condition number 5.
Second.
So moved and seconded, and further discussion on that? Councilor Fletcher.
Well, I'm a little leery, just by setting precedent with it. Trees are a real valued item by the community, we know that. So if we open this door and then further developers, you know, down the road want this, then we risk that landscaping is not getting done, or if the landscaping fails, which I've also seen that happen, where a hedge goes in and then it doesn't survive, and we have no recourse to ask that the hedge be replaced. And I think the community really values the trees and their edging. So my understanding is they put up the bond, they do the work, they get the money back.
Except for 10%.
Except for 10%.
For 1 year.
For 1 year, and then they get all the money back.
Yeah, and if this amendment does pass, it is only specific to this.
Yes, I get that it's only to this, but it does set precedent.
Councilor Price?
And I do share those concerns too, that if you relax it for one, then you could also argue that everyone's going to make it work, and why would we charge anyone? And as is pointed out, once the work's done, all but 10% is returned, so that would only be $240 would be outstanding, which would be returned within a year, which is probably not a hardship. So I'm just leery that when you do it for one, really you should do it for everyone, unless there's a really extenuating reason to do it.
Right,
Well,
Councilor Grant.
you know, unless it's silly in the first place, and in my opinion on this one it is. I mean, they're replacing a few trees that are, A, a nuisance. You know, you've got view property that you're taking the view away, and undermining or possibly undermining the foundation, which is the same situation we ran into in the last one we did this with. And so perhaps the policy maybe is not right here, but to me, there's no precedent here, and if there's other silly ones out there, then by all means we should do the same thing for them, because this to me is a landscaping issue. It's got really very little to do with trees or anything else. And I think that these people should be able to change the trees without going through a whole bunch of rigmarole and cost.
Well, the development permit area is stipulating landscape guidelines, and of course during the OCP review, we did review that. So certainly consistent with fairly current policy. In this particular instance, it is relatively minor, but still important, I guess, to preserve the integrity of that project in terms of its landscaping as it was established. I don't think anyone here is objecting to the replacement of it, and it would appear that that would pass. It's just a question whether the landscaping plan should still be required.
Well, it seems to me that perhaps there should be a different level for certain types of things that are going on here, because, you know, this is the second one that's come to us that really haven't, you know, to me, shouldn't require all of the bureaucracy that seems to go on with it. So, you know, to me, there's got to be a level there where, you know, it makes some sense to be able to just let people do some of the things on their own property.
CEO, you have your hand up.
Yes, Your Worship. I believe that the issue that Councillor Grant is speaking to and Councillor Swift has raised will be addressed in our development approval bylaw that will be coming forward in a little while as part of the, I think, the delegation authority we're looking at having transferred back to staff, so we can deal with it in a more expeditious manner.
Okay.
So I think to deal with the global issue, I think that would address your concerns there.
Although it's still landscape plans could be required, it's just that we would
Yes.
be dealing with it here.
Yes.
That's a pleasure.
I guess the other thing that has me feeling a little awkward about this particular project is that we in fact are members of that strata as the town of Comox and the library, so it's kind of like we're making the deal for ourselves. So I think that makes it awkward for me as well, so I wouldn't support it at this time.
It is worth noting that the strata will be donating the original trees for planting, hopefully on publicly owned land, so that's a good.
So we're winning all the way here.
Anything further? So we have an amendment on the table. All those in favor of the amendment? Those opposed? I don't think it matters what I say, so
So you can stay up all that time.
we lost one of the possible favors. I could have been the tiebreaker.
Yeah, well, should we bring it up again next week? That'll delay the landscaping, yeah.
So on the motion, as we had moved and seconded originally, any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? One opposed, motion's carried. All right, correspondence. We have the annual letter that we get from the Royal Canadian Naval Association at page 63, and this is regarding the upcoming Battle of Atlantic Service on May 4th. So the usual provisions on that, and there is going to be a low-level flypast. So a motion to receive and approve the green order.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Reports from members of council. We'll start with Councillor McGinn.
So going backwards, we ended the Olympics nicely with about 80 citizens at the town square down here singing "O Canada" for our Olympians and also for the Paralympians that are going to be participating and competing in Sochi. It was a nice finish and a nice community idea. The finalized copy of the Ray Closley Youth Awards are going to be coming up. Completed those, and they'll be at the next Committee of the Whole. And yesterday I attended the Aspen School Leadership Day upon invitation to council members and the mayor, and it was a great event there, seeing our youth do a number of things in a leadership capacity.
All right. And I think I saw you on a bike at the spin-a-thon.
Oh, it's been fun, thank you. Yes, it was at 11 at night, so I forgot I did it.
Well, I had a week away, so I missed all the snow, so that was a highlight for me. Before I left, I did attend the Comox Archives and Museum Society meeting, and the AGM is set for March 29th, Saturday, 2 p.m. in the Lion's Den. And I also attended the Social Planning Council meeting, and they also have a AGM coming up on the 29th of May to unveil the Quality of Life report. So should be interesting reading.
Thank you. Councillor Swift.
I actually don't have anything to report. Everything that I was going to go to was canceled because of snow.
Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. Since we last met, I attended a regional district board meeting, and following that, a regional district sports commission meeting yesterday. A note from the sports commission, the issue on the curling rink was brought forward, and the decision was made that very basic renovation to the actual curling arena, not the supplementary social area, would be considered. That's estimated at a tune of $1.9 million. That was also decided that that would go to an alternate approval process, and that is pending some discussion with member municipalities. Although we were all sitting there, regional district staff wanted to have some conversation with that. But that was approved by the board to go to alternate approval for $1.9 million to upgrade the.
And so what does that work do? You said it doesn't deal with the social
It doesn't
component.
touch the social side of the curling center. It simply addresses the ring, the sheets, the ice.
So redoing the whole play surface underneath. And
Yeah.
Okay.
The bar remains as it is.
Okay.
And also yesterday we had our final regional district meeting and finalizing of the budget, which when we presented here this is my report.
Thank you, Councilor Grant.
Yeah, so I had a BIA meeting last night that was canceled from the week before due to snow. And we were able to, believe it or not, we actually had too many directors or board members at our BIA, so we were able to pare that back. We also have set up, or they have, I shouldn't say we have, set up several new committees to do. One which will be advocacy, so they'll be working with town and other stakeholders to try and improve the business climate in town and just taking some opinions on issues as they come up. So that's one positive step, and many other things. I was also at a executive meeting of the Economic Development Society where we have changed our accounting system over. It's more of a cloud-based thing, so it's really been done to be able to help report out better, and it's almost ready, and the auditors are quite thrilled by it. So we're on the right track with that. And I was also at an Economic Development Board meeting last night where we had our new board members from the RD because the other ones had stepped off due to conflict of interest. So we had a bunch of new faces. So we went through the scope of work that was that's been going on at that. And I also saw Hugh on his bike, but I didn't actually get on.
So all that blue sky thinking results in everything being up in the clouds?
It's up in the cloud now, yeah.
All right, I'll just report briefly. I attended a flag raising for Rotary's 109th anniversary that was held at City Hall. And I would encourage the Comox Club that if they had a Rotary flag, we have a spot for it here at Town Hall for the next time, 110th anniversary next year. The CAO and I met with Jane Murphy, CEO of St. Joseph's, and the board chair, Chris Kelsey, regarding their ongoing work as part of their task force. I know Councillor Fletcher is involved as a director in terms of the future role and purpose of St. Joe's as we move towards the new hospital. And more to follow on that in the next few months. We've certainly invited Jane to come to us once they have some more to report on that initiative at a council meeting in the future. Attended the Yana fundraiser dinner, which was a great success. I don't know the final numbers, but there certainly was a full house at Philbrook Center last Friday night. CAO and I also met with Mark Stevenson, who's the representative of Comox First Nation, their lawyer, working on treaty issues, and we talked further about the area of the old gravel pit in terms of a potential sponsored crown grant for that. So we'll see where that goes. Further discussions with our MLA and other provincial representatives will ensue in the next few months. Aspen Park, yes, had their leadership day yesterday in fact, and this was the celebration of 5 years of implementing the Stephen Covey book, if you've ever read it, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it was quite impressive to see how they've embraced that. I actually had that book at home. I hadn't quite started to read it, so I started. But it's all around their 7 habits, which include number 1, be proactive. Number 2, begin with the end in mind. Number 3, put first things first. Number 4, think win-win. Number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Number 6 is synergize, and number 7 overall is to sharpen the saw. So those are all things that I'm sure we could all learn from, and I was quite impressed to see the kids demonstrate their knowledge of that, and they put the superintendent of the school district to a test of, are you smarter than a Aspen Park fifth grader? And fortunately, with a bit of help, she did pass that, so I know I would have. So that was a great event, and well done to Aspen Park. And then the Spin-a-thon, as mentioned, just some figures and facts for you. Our team, Comox, which included, among others, our CAO and other members of the staff and their spouses, members of the rec center staff, and counselors and myself, we cycled in the 24 hours 664.5 kilometers, or miles, whatever the measurement is there, out of a total for all 14 teams of just under 9,400 kilometers, which is apparently all the way from here to Lyon, France, including going over the water, which represented a significant accomplishment. And over 13,000 has been raised, and those funds are going towards Jumpstart, which is a program that assists underprivileged children to get involved with sports, which I'm sure you've all heard about. And kudos really to the rec staff putting it on, in particular Glenn Hascarl, one of the fitness instructors up there. He was up for at least 36 hours, and I'm sure many hours before that putting it all together. So well done to him, and I'm sure they'll try to reprise it again next year. So that's all I had to report. No late items, any questions from the media? No, gone. Any questions from the public question? No. And no motion to exclude the public because we're not having any camera. So a motion to adjourn would be in order. All those in favor? Motion is carried. And for those members of council who wish to partake, there's an open house next door regarding 1988 Comox. Or Beaufort, sorry.